Wales is a devolved nation. That means, I think, 20 odd years ago, the British government gave Wales their freedom effectively. They say what's going on down there. They vote in their own leaders. They have their own Senate. And it's my opinion that that Senate is completely useless. It doesn't really exist to work for the people of Wales rather than for itself and for rich Welsh socialists. That assembly only works for the rich, wealthy, top tier of Welsh society. And the only influence that Westminster has on Wales is the funding. And Westminster gives Wales a shitload of money. That's taxpayers' money. And the last payment was somewhere in the region of £18 billion. Now, around £8.3 billion of that funding goes to the Welsh NHS. The NHS in Wales is run by the Welsh Government. Unlike England, where the NHS runs the NHS, it's the Welsh Government that is ultimately responsible for the NHS. It's the same in devolved Scotland. It's the SNP or whoever the current government is in Scotland that runs the NHS. And both countries are running the NHS into the ground. In particular, Wales, where the NHS is on its knees. Waiting times have gone up. Ambulance waiting times are just too long. And as a public service, it is fucking up left, right and centre. Now, I'm not saying the NHS in England is perfect, but people in Wales are trying desperately now to get appointments over the border in England because the Welsh NHS is shit. Now, the main difference between patients in England and Wales when it comes to the NHS is that prescriptions and medicines for the Welsh are free. Meanwhile, the mugs in England, we have to pay for it. Now, the First Minister of Wales is an absolute idiot called Mark Drakeford. Mark Drakeford has a bit of a temper. I made a video a few months ago of some YouTubers who confronted him as he left, I think it was a town hall meeting, into his car, and one of the men with a camera asked him if he was a threat to the people of Wales, and Mark Drakeford just completely lost his temper and turned it around and claimed that it was the cameraman who was the threat to Wales. I mean, what a thing to say. Now, like I said, Mark Drakeford is a petulant little man with a face like a melted Wellington boot, and he's got a bit of a temper. And he did it again recently when a Welsh Conservative Assembly member questioned him about the failures of the Welsh NHS under his Welsh Labour government. And he started shouting and screaming and spitting and foaming at the mouth and throwing his ring binder around and asked the Tory minister what planet did he live in, and just really not answering the question at all. I mean, what an irresponsible, immature response from a senior politician, really. And it was all basically shouting and pointing fingers while playing whataboutery. Now, all he'd been asked about was ambulance waiting times, and he could have answered him. And if Mark Drakeford would have answered him honestly, he would have said something like, yes, we've driven the Welsh NHS into the ground since 1999 and continue to shit money up the wall on crap, but it's Westminster's fault. No, it's not Westminster's fault, because ultimately, any problems at the Welsh NHS lie at his doorstep. In Wales, the NHS buck stops with Mark Drakeford, the First Minister. And the minister responsible is Eluned Morgan. She's the Minister for Health and Social Services and part of the current ruling Welsh Labour government there. So the Welsh Labour government have literally failed the people of Wales for 20 odd years. And Mark Drakeford should own it, really. In fact, the whole Welsh Labour government should own it. And do you know what? I'll go further. Not just them, but the whole Welsh Senate. The Welsh Senate doesn't work, and the Welsh Senate ultimately just makes things worse for the Welsh people. Remember, the Welsh Senate is a very woke organisation. It is full to the brim of Welsh nationalists. Mark Drakeford himself tweeted that he wished for Wales to become a sanctuary nation. Well, if you think the Welsh NHS is on its knees now, can you imagine what it would be like when it opens the floodgates to millions, countless refugees who would undoubtedly put more pressure on all social services in Wales, not just the NHS, which would be reduced from being on its knees to literally face first lying on the ground. And if all these problems got worse after Wales gets independence, if that ever happens, and if the Welsh nationalists do eventually manage to con the Welsh people and end up joining the EU, thus answering to their Brussels masters, who on earth are they going to blame their problems on then? Because they can't blame the English in Westminster after that. And will the Welsh Assembly point the blame at Brussels? I think they will, because politicians like Mark Drakeford have shown they cannot accept responsibility nor accountability, and are always pushing for and directing the blame on someone else. So I think it's in the interest of the Welsh people to just bulldoze that Welsh Senate, raze it to the ground, turn it into a car park or something, because it's no good to man nor beast, and give power back to Westminster. Because look, let's face it, devolution hasn't worked, it is failing miserably in Scotland, and it's crippling Wales as well. And I'll tell you one more thing before I go as well. I reckon the Welsh NHS would be in a far better state today had Dippy Mark Drakeford not implemented the rather draconian lockdown rules which are currently under investigation, and an investigation he's trying to stave off. And that's that. That's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments as usual. And until my next video, have a great day, look after yourselves, question everything, and Roger Trout.